I wasn't going to do a video on this, but I thought, yeah, maybe it might not be a bad idea. So this is a Galaxy, what is this, a DX95T, in about as mint condition as you can get, really nice shape. Customer sent this in once electrolytic capacitors replaced. Yeah, not really sure why. The radio's not really that old. I mean, it's got a little bit of age to it, looking at the date codes on the ICs, but yeah, I mean, I guess, in all honesty, I guess if you're sending something in like this, they're cheap quality caps to start with, so I guess it's not a bad idea. I mean, I'd normally tell somebody with a radio like this, don't waste your money recapping it, but it's probably, they're what, halfway through their life, you know, life expectancy, so yeah, sending it in for alignment. So I guess, yeah, in the long run, I guess not a bad idea. That way you can just get it recapped, the alignment's done, you know, using good quality caps, and it'll be good for another 25, 30 years or more. But anyhow, yeah, it probably, as everybody knows, I'm not a big fan of radios like this. Amplifier built into the radio, and where does the amplifier sit? On the underside of the radio. What direction does heat go? Heat goes up. The radio's upside down, so when the amplifier or the bottom cover is installed on the radio, the heat goes straight up into the radio. Yeah, bad idea. And what's up with... I mean, I love the nice big monster heat sinks they put on the back of these things, but really? For a 2SC2166 and a 2SC2312, you really needed all that? But yeah, that's more than efficient for those two little transistors. But yeah, so it's really nice condition. It does have a little bit of glue to take out of it, but like I say, it's not extremely old, so it hasn't gotten really bad yet. It's not corrosive, so it should be fairly easy to remove. And luckily, there's not really that much in here. It looks like most of it's just on, you know, a few capacitors or some there. But the one thing you'll notice is the amplifier is not attached to the radio, and that's kind of the reason I decided, well, maybe I'll do a quickie video on this. If you have to do any type of major servicing to one of these radios, take my word for it, save yourself a lot of headache and just disconnect the amplifier. You're going to have, otherwise, because you're going to have this cover flopping around trying to, it's just, I'm not going to say it's impossible to do major servicing to the radio, but yeah, I mean, what a pain in the hoo-ha. So there's not much to getting them out. You've already obviously going to have the cover taken loose. You can just fold it over. The cables are meant to do that. There's plenty of cable length there that it can fold over. You take out 6 screws off of the shield plate right here. So there's 3 screws here, 3 screws here. Pop the cover off. Now I would suggest taking out this little circuit board. It'll make it a little bit easier. Most everything on this board plugs in. Most, I say, not everything. The input and the outputs plug in. You can see there's lots of little connectors here. But two things that aren't plug in are the positive and negative that go to this. So there's 2 red wires and 2 black wires. They were smart enough to at least not use monster size wires, but which would make it really stiff. By the same token, they didn't just use one small wire, which would have been too small for the amplifier. They did use 2 separate ones, but they both go to the same terminal or connection points on the board. So the easiest, now the positives hook up back here, easy to get in there with a solder and iron, no problems. But the ones down in here, just save yourself the headache. Just pull this little board out, just desolder the 4 points there. And actually, it's not a bad idea to remove this anyhow, because these it's not so much that the boards fail, but I've seen these solder connections fail because these radios are assembled with, you know, they're ROS compliant, or they use lead-free solder. It's a little bit more brittle than the good old leaded solder. Now, where these binocular transformers solder down to the board, I can see there's plenty of solder on there, even lead-free, that should be fine. But this little guy, it sits up, you know, there can be some stress there, so, and for some reason they always seem to under-solder these a little bit, so yeah, it's a good idea just to desolder these anyhow and re-solder them with a good lead tin silver solder. To basically strengthen that joint up. The other advantage is, once you pull this little board out, you can get into the negative where the negative terminals go, because the positives go right there where you see that big hole, and the 2 negative wires go down into that hole right there. So, like I say, just good idea. Remove this out of the way. That way you're not breaking wires. You're not scratching up the cabinet on this thing. And trust me, you'll thank yourself 2 minutes into your job because you don't have that amplifier flopping around when you're moving the radio around. So, let me get to it. Like I say, otherwise, it looks really clean inside. I mean, faceplate looks clean. This looks clean. Actually, it looks like I do have to remove the faceplate on this, unfortunately. Because, look at that. There's 3 caps on there. You got the processor, and there's 3 electrolytic caps on there. So, I got to get to the underside of that board. And that should be the channels. Yeah, that's the channel selector and a lot of your other... What do we got here? Yeah, that's okay. The frequency counter and everything hooks up to that. So, yeah, need to pull the faceplate off so I can get in to desolder them. But otherwise, yeah, good looking radio. I don't know if this one, I guess maybe it had to have been gotten into, like I say, not a big, oh, really? Well, that tells you how much I work on these. Man, seriously, electrolytic caps? Why not? Now I have to completely dismantle the, not only just pull the face off, I gotta completely dismantle it. What we got there? There's a little sticker, DX95T fell from somewhere in there. But, anyhow, it had the, you can see it right there, void if removed warranty sticker on there. I guess that had to have been another one installed. That can't have been the original, because if I'm not mistaken, these radios, when they sell these things out of the box, they don't do CB channels. So yeah, I'm guessing the bodge wire and the diode there should be the enabling modification, I guess. Or do these just have jumpers? Don't see any header sockets. I'd have to pull the schematic and look, but yeah, so I'm assuming it's probably that wire and that diode on the bottom. One or the other are the modification for CB channels. Because like I say, usually these things do not do CB out of the box. So yeah, somebody's been in here, but it doesn't look like it's been hacked at. I don't see, at least to just a quick initial inspection here, trying to look around the camera, it doesn't look like anything's been butchered. There's no additional parts, other than usually like a factory bodge putting a cap in or something. But other than that, yeah, there's no signs anybody's been hacking at this thing. So hey, that's always a good thing. Because man, whoo, people can do some hacking to black box radios. So yeah. It looks like I got a little bit more disassembly than I had planned on. Man, do they have any caps on this board? Nah, it looks like it's just controls. What is that little board for? Like I say, I don't work on a lot of these. I'd have to pull the schematic and look at it. And there's a little little black board there. And Galaxy, or not Galaxy, but Ranger, which is who makes these, and matter of fact, you can see it says Galaxy right there. What does it say right on the board? They don't even just put their part number on it anymore. They even put their name on it, Ranger. So yeah. But anyhow, they've been doing it for years. Instead of using integrated circuits, from a chip manufacturer, say Texas Instruments or whoever, they actually make their own little boards that just replace the ICs. And there's nothing wrong with that. They work just fine. But yeah, it looks like they've got another one stuck up in here. I'm not sure what that one does. Like I say, I'd have to pull a schematic and see. But anywho, I may, since I do have to, I didn't realize I was going to have to pull. I knew I had to pull the faceplate off to get to these, but since I got caps there, since I really have to completely discombobulate this poor thing, I may shoot a little bit of footage of that, so that way for reference in the future, if anybody gets one of these and wiring and it's just been hacked at and butchered, maybe you'll have at least a little bit of reference footage that you can use to try to put your radio back together. So let me get at it. Okay, so I stand corrected. It does look like it's probably I mean that they're splatterbox radios to start with, but it's even more of a splatterbox radio. Yeah, once I pulled the echo board up, I could see missing transistor, and if you look even closer, you can see 3 solder pads right there above my finger have been disturbed. That's because there's no terminals in them anymore. The limiter circuit's been disabled, so yeah, that needs to go back in. I figured out why there's 2 electrolytic capacitors are in behind this meter here. Didn't even dawn on me. Like I said, I don't mess around with these things much. So yeah, I guess these have, and I haven't even turned this one on honestly yet. I guess this has an electroluminescent, I'll get it out here. Electroluminescent faceplate. You know, think of it like the Cobra 148 night watch or 29 night watches. I guess they're using that because see that little cable there? And there's actually the plug right here for it. That little flat flex cable plugs into. And if you look at the back of the faceplate, you can see it's kind of green around there. So yeah, I guess all the lettering on this glows. Hopefully this isn't as not that it matters to me because I don't own anything that has night watch or that kind of stuff. But hopefully for the customer, Rangers aren't as useless as the ones in the Cobras. I mean, the Cobras look nice when they work. The problem is they just don't work very long. That's the most unreliable thing in probably any radio ever made, was the Cobra night watch. Man, those decals go bad just so fast in certain, I guess it's climate, I guess hot environments or humidity gets to it, I don't know. But man, I've seen those things in just a couple of years they fail. And you know, but anyhow, yeah, I didn't realize it had that. So that's what those caps are for. That's actually the inverter module. Actually, I can pull this out. I got it off now. So that's the inverter module right there. So just 4 screws hold that board on, 2 here and then 2 down on the other side of it. So there's the bottom side of the counter and channel selector board there. So yeah, but it does look like the only real thing that's been hacked or clipped in this is the limiter, so that's good. So let me get the little inverter module out there, and then once I have that little board pulled, I can start recapping the radio. And I'll just go ahead and unplug this again so this thing's not flopping around. I'll recap this first, and then there's like 1 or 2 caps underneath of this board that I can't get to once this is in. I'll replace those, then I can reattach the front of the radio here, and that way it's not flopping around. Because like I say, if you can, always try to disconnect floppy stuff, or, you know, in the case of the echo module here is a good example. You know, you can either leave it in, or if you're going to be working underneath of it a lot, just unplug it, take the 1 screw out, get it out of your way. That way it's not bouncing around. You don't end up maybe possibly breaking a wire off. Now, I wouldn't expect that to happen on a radio. Like I say, this one's not like this is an antique, but you know, if you're working on something old or a radio that's been worked on a lot, wires have been bent back and forth God knows how many times, because Lord knows how many people's hands might have been in a radio over time. So yeah, best to not be bending wires any more than you can, because I've had radios like that. You go to pull the faceplate off, just as you're folding it up, boink, a wire breaks off. And you go to fix that one, boink, another one breaks off. And it's like, ah, ha, ha, and then you spend an hour playing the break and resolder, you know, broken wires off. That's just a pain in the butt when you have to do that. So like I say, anytime you can avoid floppy stuff, try to. Okay, so she's all back together now. Pretty much the only thing I have to do is just put the top and bottom covers on it, and I'll do that, and then to finish up the video. Didn't run into anything really strange other than one self-induced problem. It happens to all of us eventually, and today was just my day. So I've replaced all the electrolytic capacitors. This had the modulation limiter was removed, so the AMC transistor was removed. I replaced it. Now the radio had modulation, horrible modulation, but it was boxcard when I first started. But it had, you know, horrible, because it was just way over modulated. Put the limiter in, yeah, I had maybe 10%. if I was lucky, and that was with the gain turned up the whole way. AMC and ALC turned up the whole way. I barely had anything. And you'd tap the radio, and the modulation would kick in a little bit, and then it would fade out. So, yeah, just some really quick searching on the backside. I discovered I say self-induced because it was a problem that I created. When I recapped the radio, I had to remove one of the RF shields, actually right under here. Desoldered the two pads, lifted it up, but when I reinstalled it, just a tiny, tiny little solder bridge came over to which was the ground plane, of course, came over and shorted out part of the AMC circuit. Just some quick diagnostics running through the voltage levels on the in the AMC ALC circuit. I had voltages all over the place where I shouldn't have anything. You know, I'd key the microphone with no modulation, mic gain turned down the whole way, and absolutely every single transistor, and there's even a digital transistor in these radios. They actually use what's known as a digital transistor. It's a normal transistor, but it has some built-in bias resistors. Every single one of them was turned on full hard from, with a base voltage of around 8 to 7 volts. So I knew I had a serious problem somewhere that shouldn't be too hard to find, and it wasn't. Like I say, I found that little solder bridge, took that little guy out of there, and yeah, it was fine then. So this is no longer a splatter box. Well, I mean, it's a Ranger board, Galaxy radio, so it's as good as it's going to be. But the modulation set to 100%, and SSB ALC's adjusted properly. The frequencies on this radio were fairly close. I don't think they were off. The main oscillator wasn't off more than probably 150 hertz in any mode, which isn't bad considering I see radios 500, 800 hertz or more occasionally. So this one was, it was off a little bit, but it wasn't excessively bad. So all back together now. So let me get the covers back on it, and it looks like there's barely any skip. It's just starting to come in, so we'll give it a try and see if there's anything on sideband once I get her put back together. And welcome to Central America Central. Yeah, there's nothing coming in skip-wise on 40 channels, but you get down into the bottom end of band D on this radio at 26555 on the lower sideband. So it sounds like Mexico's coming in good to Pennsylvania at the moment. Nothing in the USA, but Mexico's coming in good. So, in any case, it's all back together now. Like you see, this is a really clean radio. Was really well taken care of from whoever the previous owner was, because I think the current owner got this used. Does have lots of controls. Matter of fact, they actually ran out of, I guess, room for controls on this thing, so these radios actually have 3 triple function controls. So you have the variable mic and talkback here, and then if you push this control, that turns the talkback on and off. This one is the dimmer control and RF power, and then if you push this, that turns off and on the frequency display. That way if you're driving down a road at night, you're not getting blinded by a bright display if you don't need it. And then this one is the fine and coarse clarifier, along with, and you see it has a little indicator light there as well to let you know for the noise blanker and A&L. Has lots of other buttons up here. Has the meter control for SWR modulation and power. Has a Roger beep off and echo position. Has a 40 dB pad, so that's an attenuator, because if you notice, there is no RF gain control in this radio. So you either have no RF gain, or if you're really close to somebody really strong, you can turn on the 40 dB pad. So I give you an idea of how much attenuation that is. Yeah, so only the strongest stations are going to come through, but perfect for if you're talking to somebody you know, really close by. And then it has the GNF, which, yeah, I don't know, maybe some people like that. I've never found the sound quality that great. That stands for Galaxy Noise Filter. And of course everybody shuts up now. You know, I get the feeling they tried to simulate filtering like you'd have on a real amateur radio, and yeah, it helps, but yeah, I don't know. It's just the tone. It just doesn't seem to be level. It's just, I don't know. I've never been a big fan of that. Have a light here for a modulation lamp, so you can turn that on or off, and then if you slide the whole way to the right, because this, you know, channelized radio and has the normal skip channels, you can pick up your 10K. One of the nice features this has is you don't have to worry about unlocking the clarifier in one of these. It's already unlocked. You can go off standard, RX over here, or RX and TX locked together, which is where most people would leave it. Very nice. That's a nice feature. If you ever get tired of, especially, you know, if you get your control just right on, I'm trying to get it to do it. I'll probably never do it on camera. But if you've ever had a frequency counter and you get your control set to where the number you're just right on the edge of it being, say, 49 or 50 or 48 or 49, and it's just fluttering back and forth, well, you can get rid of that last digit. You can just hit that little button there and the last digit disappears. So that's, you know, kind of a nice little feature. Normal mode control switch, so you know this is a multi-mode, AM upper lower sideband, FM and PA, does not have a CW position. And then this is what, 8-band, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, yeah, 8-band radio. So see if there's anybody else way down here. You know, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever really listened below channel 1 before. It just dawned on me, you know, if you go 40 up, you know, so from band E to band F, that is a popular channel for international skip, where it appears that this is popular for in South America, for, I guess. So for the out-of-banders, and it even sounds like Mexico's fading out now, so let's... Yeah, like I say, it's just dead. Oh, there was somebody for a second on 37. And let's just go to... And of course, Mexico coming in on channel 9. So, in any case, there you go. There's a Galaxy DX95T. Like I say, didn't really need much. Customer wanted it recapped. The horrible, because the AMC, ALC had been disabled, that's been re-enabled, and then the self-induced problem of almost no modulation, which was just a small solder bridge. I got that fixed up. Transceiver alignment and cleaned it up, and it's ready to be put into service.